So I'm super happy that I'm starting to make these, because I think the biggest thing as a father that I want for my son is for him to know how to live his life outside me. And I know that's anybody's wish for their son, is like, you don't want them to fail. You don't want them to not do good in life. And I know those are my biggest failure. Yeah, well, personally, yeah, I have a lot of failures myself, but my biggest feelings around my son is like, I want to lead him the best I can. And I know in my own childhood, I was led at times by certain male figures, for sure, like my dad and my stepdad and coaches and things like that. But I would say, and not to put anybody on Front Street in my family, but like, I didn't have the best guidance growing up. I deferred to a lot of like older boys for my guidance instead. I mean, sure, I sucked in, whatever I could from the time I did have with my dad, or the small amount of time I did have with my stepdad, or these things. But again, for me personally, there was, I think, a lot of assumption that maybe the other party was doing these things when they weren't, so that nobody was doing it, and I had to do a lot of learning on my own. And of course, there are things I learned from both of the masculine figures in my life, for sure. Different things, completely contrasting in different things. And I'm thankful to have learned those things and to move forward with them. But I will say, I've got to be honest and objective and true to myself too, and not speak untruth. Like, I had to teach myself a lot in life alone. I had to learn a lot alone. Especially like after I graduated too, that's where I did a lot of my like, all right, well, I'm flawed in all these areas, and like, how do I become stronger in them? And reaching out to mentors and coaches and trying to gain guidance, or just, I know I was always seeking, trying to figure out like, what am I doing with my life? I know I wanted to be like an actor for the longest time, and I would just create these crazy pipe dream kind of realities, but never put the action into them. So it's interesting now, sitting at 35, having a son, having a wife, 2 daughters, being a marketing guy, which I never thought I'd do, which is super interesting to me that that's the lane I ended up in. And it makes sense for me anyways, but it's not something I entirely enjoy. So then I look at my son and I'm just like, how do I spare him from the trajectory I had? And I know in some sense I already am, because like, he's growing up with an intact family, with a dad that's present, probably more present than I need to be, because I work from home or do remote work a lot of the time. So I'm like hyper present in his life and guiding him. But I can also see, like, just like any extreme, like whether you have parents that are aloof and don't really teach you much, or they're not around, or you have parents that are always around and always on top of you. Like, I've had both of those actually. I've pendulumed between those extremes in different households, but I myself find that I think I'm more the always present one. So then my worry for him is being around too much, guiding him too much, and not giving him enough room and space to grow. Not helicopter parenting in some sense, but like, just being around too much. And I think, it's common for dads to not be around, so there's like this empty space for the people in your family to grow while you're gone, especially when you're at work and stuff like that. But when I work from home, it's like I'm always present, and so I can always kind of help out a little bit, or add to the parenting and everything. It's an interesting dynamic, but I'm watching the psychological effects too on like childhood development and things, of like always being around. And I don't know if clearly there was a point when men were around more. I'd imagine that all changed during the 1900s, more or less. Dad just being gone all the time. And again, men have always been gone. I'm not stating that, but it's just an interesting like dynamic to see. And then now I got to navigate the differences in my own life from the childhood I had to the parenting I'm doing based on that childhood, or that run-on sentence. It's very interesting. But I guess my biggest thing is trying to lead my son in the way he shall go, and then like stumbling upon areas where have either completely failed as a father, or areas I feel I might have done well, but I can't be sure yet. And yeah, fatherhood's a very interesting thing. And I probably overthink it and overworry it more than a lot of people. I don't know. I mean, I am not in anyone's head, so I can't tell. But I mean, like, I see some men that look like they don't really care that much. And I've seen the whole spectrum from like caring like way too much to the point where the kid can't grow, to, like I said, just hands off to the point where they're raising themselves, essentially. I've seen the gambit throughout my life. And again, I'm trying to think of like the best way to raise somebody, you know, as a male, and leading him in the way he should go, and the areas of my life that didn't go right, and how I'm not gonna recreate that in him. And somehow, like, I do in some sense. In my very fear of trying to cause something not to happen, I cause it to happen. And that's like one of the great mysteries of fatherhood for me currently, is like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes for me with my son, where I'm like, I can't tell if I'm inducing the very thing I'm trying to avoid by becoming the very person in his life that I think he might interact with at some point and not know what to do with. So I'm like modeling that to teach him. Like, I don't really know. But I know, like, parents are hard on their kids, and I'm just thinking in my own head, like, and not every parent's hard on their kid, I take that back. Anything I say comes with a grain of salt, because there's always an opposite to anything in life. But I specifically think of, like, the overbearingness, or like when we're on our kids about stuff that we're worried that they're not figuring out, or they're not gonna figure out, or they're behind compared to some other kid you're thinking of, or what will they do in this circumstance, because you think of something you've been through, and then you imagine your kid trying to go through that circumstance, and you feel like they wouldn't be able to navigate it the way you did because they're a child, but you were a child. So it doesn't make too much sense, right? Like, people are people. But I think our kids, we love them so much that we do weird things as parents. And I know this is a thing because I experienced it in my own childhood with my own 4 parents that I had, and even in my own parenting now, where, like, I'll get so worried that my son might get bullied, or he needs to be stronger or tougher, or these things, because I know what it takes to be a man in the world, and like who you have to become to be a good leader, a good father, a good husband. You can't be a coward. You have to be stronger. You will become a coward. You'll make shitty choices. You'll slip out of stuff. You'll ruin your life over all those choices too. Like, you're not going to create the life of your dreams. You're just going to stagnate, and anything you don't work on, you don't grow. You just stop growing right there. So, and I see that in a lot of people's lives around me, where like they either gave up, or they don't want to do the work anymore, or they don't know what to do, but they also don't seem to care to know. So it gets hard, but life is hard. So, and I'm not picking on anyone, because life is hard. We've all been through different things. Like, I've lost a kid. I've had different things happen to me. I've almost been homeless with a family. Like, I've had enough hardship over the past few years personally, that I know some people will never go through. And it's developed me for sure. It's broken me in other ways, but I've had to rebuild myself back up from those, bad situations. But there's one thing that I feel like I've seen from God, is that anytime he like destroys something in my life, or it destroys itself. I wouldn't say he destroys it, but it gets, it just falls apart because it was meant to, because it was never the way, or his way. And it was my design and my choices and my leaning tower of Pisa that just falls over and crumbles. And then I'm always kind of standing there in the rubble going, oh, and flipping out. And I always realize that's a new opportunity to rebuild myself stronger than the previous time. And that like God's giving me an opportunity to be a better person, or to go through some hardship and a pivot, so I can become the person that like he's designing me and processing me to be. And if you don't go through the process, you can't come out the other side as the finalized result of that process. And I know when I go through these what I call processes, basically like hardships and like really tough areas of my life, either financially or emotionally or mentally or physically or whatever it is, like I got a Rolodex of them, as we all do. We all got stories. We all got our little bag we carry on our back. But I just find it interesting that my biggest growth a lot of the time comes out of these crazy circumstances that I know from the outside, when people are looking at me go through them, they probably don't get it, and I hardly get it half the time. But God's doing something with my life, like he's doing with everyone's life. If you let him in, he'll start making. He's a way maker, so he'll make a way for you, but it will come at the cost of sacrifice and change and hardship, and most people aren't willing to go through that. Most people want to be comfortable and know what's familiar and feel safe and secure, and I can't disagree with that, I guess, in some sense, but there's no growth there. You're not going to become anything. You'll stay. You won't die. You'll survive, I guess. But you're kind of just hanging out waiting to die, not really living a life, and that's not a life I'd want to live. So for all the madness of my own life, and I get how my life must look to people at times, but I'm living it. I'm going through the adventure. I'm growing. The man I am today is not even an iota of the person I was even years ago. The things I feel I'm capable of today in 2026 versus even 2025 are absolutely insane. And it has come off of the back of extreme hardships over and over and over, like a sword getting beat by a hammer in the forge. Just, no, you're getting beat again and again and again. And how much can you take before the quench and you like get tempered? I think the biggest thing for me is I want to give back at this point in my life, and I feel like the direction God's sending me in and putting me in is to be able to talk to people in this like format. It may not be exactly this, like I don't want to sit in my car forever and do a video and run out here and like get some space and silence to create a quick video, but I have this inner desire and passion to do this stuff, and I've been letting the enemy in my head just take over for too long. I have this issue around needing to be perfect all the time, and I think I could like psychologically trail that back. Why do you need to be perfect? Well, I want attention, or I want to be liked, or I want to feel good about myself, or I want others to feel good about me. You could just keep tracing it back, like what's the core here, and like why do you not actualize it? And you got to ask yourself questions, because you don't like to hear the answer, you're never going to grow. So like I do this all the time. I just grate myself, and again, I might be on the opposite extreme with this shit. I might be too reflective and too self-deprecating to the point where I will just tear myself apart to get to the substance, call that good. But I think that if you're not consciously every single day doing something that's new, scares you, that's different, that's novel, it's like, just don't Groundhog Day your whole life. You don't get anything from it. It's easy, but nothing worth it is easy. Doing the right thing is usually the hard thing. And that's like one pair of advice I give my kids in life about a lot of things is you can choose hard and get easy later, or you can choose easy right now and you'll get hard later. And that applies in so many areas of people's lives, whether they realize it or not. Like, you can set yourself up in your 20s for the rest of your life, or you can party and spend all your money and do drugs and get addicted and make bad choices and hook up with the wrong people and hang out with the wrong crowd and get lost and have to find yourself and pull yourself out of some trauma you created for yourself based on your choices, or you lost all your friends because you didn't keep up with them, or you didn't pour anything into those relationships anymore. You name it. Like, we're all flawed. We all make bad decisions at most of the time, probably for most of us, but there's a slice of people that know how to make good decisions and respect themselves and care about themselves and care about others and want the best for others and want the best for themselves, and you can become that person too. And I know that's possible because I've been the opposite of all those things at one point, and now I'm also trying to become that version of myself. Not this self-seeking, egoic dude that's trying to figure out all the mysteries of the universe constantly, but can't figure his own life out. If God has taught or shown me anything, is I spent too long focusing on aspects of myself and my own narcissism, might be the best word, of like having to prove to either others or myself, because I should only be proving things to God, that like I did it, or I figured it out, I'm smart, like look at me, look what I've done. And we're not justified by our works, we're justified, that's great, we're justified by grace. And that's a super hard concept, I think, for people to understand, and it took me years to even like, I'm still trying to understand it. I mean, I get it on an intellectual level, I guess, but to actually believe it and know it to be true are different things. And that's the walk I'm in right now. And I'd say I'm walking as I'm beginning to believe. And I know I'm at the beginning of my journey. And I'm trying to get out of the intellectual side of everything and into actually doing and being and becoming and actualizing. Because that's the point. It's not endless talking and thinking, and it's doing, it's becoming, it's actualizing. God didn't ask us to think all day, he asked us to do. He asked us to do the work. We're not justified by the work, but we got to do the work. And that's another thing too, is like this thought that like, okay, we're not justified by our works, so there's nothing to do, or you don't have to do any works. Like, well, you do got to work on yourself. There's a lot of work to be done around here and around in life, and that is what God is calling you to do. But he's calling you to do that with him as the co-owner of your mind, in a certain sense. And I know when I say all this stuff how I sound, because I know how I used to think of people that said things like this, and I just thought it was silly and stupid, or like uneducated, or regressed, or simple-minded. And I think that's the great trap of intellectualism and scientism, and I'm not against science. I believe in science. I believe God created math and geometry and physics, and those are labels and terms we've given these truths as man, because we've discovered them. Sorry, yeah, we didn't create them, we discovered them, but they already exist, right? We're stumbling upon this stuff. It's already inherent, it's baked into the fabric of reality. Like, you can't separate the speed of light from light. They're just conjoined, and that's a certain number, right? Things are objective in God's world because they have to logically make sense. He can supersede his own rules because he's supernatural, but within the natural, things work a specific way, and that's why we can understand things, and you can even have wisdom or understanding of anything, because something has to be the right way it happens, and then everything else has to be the wrong way, and there's one objective truth to how something goes. If you're going 60 miles per hour, you're going 60 miles per hour, not 40, right? But why? I know that sounds stupid to even ask, but it's just a truth. Like, if I shine light on something, it's going to heat up. Why? right? Like, and ask your why questions. That's science. Like, we're making hypotheses, we're doing experiments to test these hypotheses, we're getting data, we're collecting that, we're analyzing the data, and we're coming to conclusions. And then we either recreate a new hypothesis based on the feedback from the data, which is a self-feedback loop, which we iterate on and improve, and we optimize, and we get closer to a more refined answer, right? Like, I believe in science. I use it in marketing all the time. Marketing wouldn't even be possible if it weren't for science and data and analytics and understanding behavior and psychology. But what is psychology, right? Behavior. But what is behavior? It's actions, it's doing, it's something that can be seen in an organism or object or whatever, and how it functions repetitively around the same set of reactions, impulses, conditions, whatever. I'm not going to go too deep in all of it. But at the end of the day, like, that's baked into everything. Everything is because it is, as simply as it can be. But that being said, all of that being said, at the end of the day, the biggest thing I've realized is, like, I built my life on quicksand. And I'm realizing that I didn't build it on Christ. I didn't build it on the cornerstone. I built it on myself. And that's why it fails. That's why it falls. Because man is finite. He's temporal. Like, we're all going to die. This flesh dies. We can't associate with it. We're in it. I'm not going to deny it. But I have to supersede it, which is hard. There'll be time, like, I know my sins. I know what I got to work on. Anger. I have anger issues sometimes around things. Like, I'm reactive. And I have to shut that part of my brain off. When I'm feeling that emotion, I have to, like, that's what I have to work on. Is, like, stopping the little red man from running around my brain when he wants to take control because he doesn't like something. But again, at the end of the day, does it matter what I like in a situation about something? No, not really. It's just how I feel about it. It doesn't mean it's objectively true. It's my subjective feelings on something. But I have to realize that I have to have the fruit of the Spirit of self-control, and I need to be able to have kindness and empathy for others. Empathy is not one of them, but kindness is, and self-control are. Fruits of the Spirit. But yeah, no, I'm noticing I'm trailing now. So I'm going to cut this short, and by short, we're 20 minutes in, but I think I've rambled enough, and I'm feeling a close out. So as always, guys, God bless you, and have a wonderful day.